My manager said in a meeting that women couldn't handle major decisions, then presented my work as his own. I didn't try to stop him, but when the foreign investor asked to bring in the person who had signed the original agreement, the entire room turned toward me. The night before the meeting, I closed the final slide of my presentation, set my laptop aside, and stared at the cold coffee on the kitchen table, the same table where I had filled out the children's school forms for years, where grocery lists were made before Thanksgiving dinner, and where my former husband and I had talked about our 401k mortgage and retirement plans as though the future were a fixed destination we would reach together. I was 46 then, the children had left for college, my divorce had been final for 3 years, and I was a strategy director at a technology company where my title sounded important, but real authority was usually hidden behind a man's signature. I had spent 15 months negotiating an agreement with an overseas investment firm, taking calls across New York, London, and Singapore time zones, answering questions from the legal team, calculating financial risks, and building an expansion plan that could take our company into 3 new markets over the next 5 years. My manager, Daniel, had contributed very little to the project, but every week he asked how far along I was, then repeated my findings to his boss as though he had reached those conclusions himself. I knew the habit well. Women in offices learn to recognize certain things early, which men appreciate your work, which ones are threatened by your competence, and which ones smile while quietly pulling the ground out from under your chair. 2 days before the meeting, he called me into his office, closed the door, and told me he would be giving the presentation. I did not ask why. I already knew. He straightened a few papers on his desk, then said with a faint smile, "This is a major deal, and the truth is, women can get emotional when big decisions have to be made. Investors need to see strong leadership." I looked at him, then at the family photograph on his desk where his wife and 2 daughters stood together on a beach, and I said only, "The presentation file is in your inbox." He probably mistook my calmness for defeat. People like Daniel often mistake silence for weakness, because no one ever taught them that a person can make a decision without making noise. I could have stopped him. I could have gone to human resources, shown them the emails, or told the executive team that every slide, every projection, and every risk model had been created by me, but I did none of those things. I had spent much of my life reassuring people that I was not angry, not difficult, and not too ambitious. At PTA meetings, I had played the perfect mother, I had treated our Sunday Costco trips like a family tradition, and I had sat through Thanksgiving dinners pretending there was no old argument buried beneath the table. I already knew how exhausting it was to perform, so this time I did not perform. I waited. During the final stage of the negotiations, the investment firm had added a requirement. The original negotiation lead would receive limited signing authority for the compliance appendices and market entry guarantees. Daniel had probably never read those documents from beginning to end. He had allowed me to sign them because legal details bored him, and because he believed power belonged to the person who spoke the loudest in a conference room. On the day of the meeting, he arrived in a navy suit, opened my presentation on his laptop, and motioned for me to sit near the far end of the table. Our executive team, attorneys, finance officers, and 3 investors from London were already in the room. Beyond the glass walls, the city continued as usual, cabs pulled to the curb, people carried coffee into office buildings, and no one outside knew that a man was about to present 15 months of another person's work as his own. Daniel read the sentence I had written on the first slide, then presented my numbers on the second. He placed his finger on the market map I had created and nodded as though the plan had formed in his mind during long, sleepless nights. At one point he said, "When I first identified this opportunity, I immediately understood that we needed to move away from the traditional approach." I said nothing. I did not even reach for the glass of water in front of me. When the presentation ended, the room remained quiet for a few moments. Then Elena Markov, the head of the investment group, thanked Daniel. She reviewed the final slides, spoke softly to her attorney, and said that before signing she wanted to speak with the person who had signed the original market entry agreement and the compliance guarantees. Daniel adjusted himself in his chair, smiled, and said, "Of course. I'm the project lead." Elena opened the file, moved from the first page to the final appendix, then read my name aloud. The moment was nothing like the ones shown in movies. No music began to play, no one jumped to their feet in shock, and the pen did not fall from Daniel's hand. The entire room simply turned toward me, slowly, as though someone had changed the direction of the light. I rose from my chair, buttoned my jacket, and walked to the other end of the table. Elena asked whether the projections included the currency risks from the previous quarter. I told her they did, not only in the base model but also in the sensitivity analysis, and that Appendix 12 contained 3 separate scenarios. She opened Appendix 12. Everything was there. Then she asked about market regulations, the staffing model, and the exit protections. I answered every question without rushing and without looking at Daniel. I did not tell anyone that the work was mine because there was no longer any need to say it. The work had already recognized its author. The agreement was placed in front of me that afternoon. Our CEO explained that my presence and signature were legally required, then announced that the International Expansion Division would report directly to me from that point forward. Daniel remained silent. The presentation was still open in front of him and his name was still written across it, but no one in the room believed that name anymore. I did not try to humiliate him. I did not repeat his words, mention the photograph of his daughters, or ask what he now thought about women making important decisions. I no longer asked questions. I had become the answer. 6 months later, he was dismissed from the company not because of that meeting, but because once one lie is discovered, people begin examining the rest of the paperwork. Several projects presented under his name turned out to contain the work of other employees, and his decisions lacked the judgment he had claimed to possess for years. Today I am the senior vice president of that same division. My children are occupied with lives of their own. Some Sundays I go to Costco and some Sundays I do not. And at Thanksgiving I no longer feel responsible for making everyone believe that everything is fine. I look at my retirement plan as a useful calculation now, not a sacred promise. I learned long ago that revenge does not always mean destroying the person who wronged you. Sometimes it means standing quietly in your rightful place until the truth walks into the room on its own. If this story stayed with you, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about truth, patience, and quiet strength. Your support helps us continue sharing meaningful stories like this one. Thank you for watching and thank you for being here.